I'm a bit disappointed that this spring we're going to adjust our clocks again. I had thought that there had been enough noise about getting rid of daylight savings time that something would be done about it. And I learned to my further disappointment, the reason we didn't get rid of daylight savings time is because supposedly we needed the federal government to okay it. And that strikes me as odd. I've known for a long time that time is just whatever you agree for it to be, right? So, for example, during the pandemic, a lot of stores closed early because the business didn't justify all the extra hours, right? Nobody really forced them to close. I guess in some cities they did have curfews, but the grocery store that I was going to was closing at 8 p.m. I don't think our curfews were that early, but because their business needs justified it, right? Now, if enough people wanted to ignore daylight savings time, well, the federal government can say it's 5 p.m., but you can behave like it's 4 p.m. There's nothing to stop you from doing that, right? The problem is everybody worships whatever the federal government says that they just go along with it, right? Which really bothers me. Like, why? So studies have shown that there's been more accidents, and even though it's called daylight savings time, in today's economy, it actually wastes money. And the reason for that is because lighting is very cheap compared to air conditioning and heating. So right now, as I'm recording this, all the light bulbs in my room are LED light bulbs. They consume about 5 to 10 watts and give off what 100 watts used to give off, right? And unfortunately, to heat up a room would take up a lot more, right? In terms of the heater, I think the heating we use burns natural gas here. That's considerably more expensive than the lighting. And all that just so we can worship whatever the federal government wants to say, right? During the pandemic, we clearly saw that time was whatever you decided it to be, right? Especially if you had the luxury of working remotely, right? So a lot of my work isn't really tied to any time of the day. I find that I've been sleeping a whole lot better because I get to sleep at the beat of my own body, right? I do sleep a lot better when I sleep at the beat of my own body as opposed to whatever the federal government decides what time it is, right? Now, it's kind of interesting. When I think about time, I actually think about time relative to the point I'm at. To give you an example, I love to view the night sky, star constellations and all that. And in my head, Seattle is like 7 or 8 minutes behind Ellensburg. But obviously they use the same time zone because we don't want people to have to adjust their clock 7 or 8 minutes every time they commute, right? But in my head, those are in 2 different time zones. And I actually prefer mean solar time, assuming that you got people. Actually, it might not be so hard today because a lot of people have electronics telling them what time it is, right? The electronics would just have to readjust, right? So in my mind, there's actually infinitely many time zones, and there's no such thing as daylight savings time, right? Now, my parents had this weird hack when I was a kid. When I was a kid, my parents used to have this habit of setting every clock a few minutes fast so that we would never run late, right? You would look at the clock, oh my god, it's 2 p.m., but it was really only 1:55. The funny thing is that my mom would often say, don't worry about it, it's only 1:55. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, why do you want to set the clocks fast just to tell yourself that you've already set the clocks fast? I'd rather know what time it actually is, right? It never made sense to me. And now that I'm all grown up, I have infinitely many time zones. It's just kind of funny how we think about time depending on what you want to do, right? But why do we need the federal government to tell us what time it is, right? What else do you want the federal government to tell you, right? It's just really silly in my opinion. I say we get rid of daylight savings time by having everybody agree that we get rid of it, right? Thanks for watching.